The internet can be really helpful if you're looking up something like a great new recipe for chili. But if you're looking for something more complicated than that, such as how to get Medicaid benefits to pay for long-term care, it gets complicated very quickly. You might not be hearing from the most reputable source, and even if you have found a credible source, they might be describing the way Medicaid works in a completely different state, where the rules are different than they are in Pennsylvania. My name is Patrick Colley. I'm an elder law attorney with Keystone Elder Law in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, and I speak to clients nearly every day, and so I've heard it all. I've heard all of the misunderstandings about how Medicaid works, or what the people heard from their friends or saw on the internet. So I want to help clear up some of the myths about Medicaid and how you pay for long-term care. The first is that some people say, well, I'm not eligible for Medicaid. Medicaid is for really, really poor people who just don't have any money at all. And I've lived a modest life, but I have enough money that I don't qualify for Medicaid. Well, that's wrong. Medicaid is the sort of safety net for the middle class. It is there for most people to pay for the crushing expense of long-term care. Long-term care insurance was supposed to provide that safety net, but it really just didn't work out that way. Too many people considered it to be prohibitively expensive, so hardly anybody has long-term care insurance. So Medicaid is something that you paid into with your paychecks, the deductions from your paychecks. It is there as part of the social safety net for people when they get into long-term care situations. And it's especially important when you think about a decision that Congress made, which is that if one spouse has to go into nursing care, which would normally cost about $11,000 a month, we don't want the spouse living at home to be impoverished, especially if one had always been the breadwinner and the other one worked in the home. We just don't want that. And so Medicaid helps to even everything out. So Medicaid is not just for the very, very poor, although that's part of the Medicaid program. It's a huge program, but a good chunk of it deals with regular people like you and me who need to be able to pay for long-term care without impoverishing their spouse at home. So that's the first myth, is just not being eligible for Medicaid. You're probably wrong. You probably are eligible for Medicaid, but we can talk about your circumstances if you have a question. The second one is some people believe, well, I can protect my assets from Medicaid and the cost of long-term care by simply transferring it all to my spouse, or worse, transferring it all to my children. That will do nothing to protect your assets. So in the case of spouses, Medicaid considers everything, almost everything that the spouses own, either jointly or individually, to be 100% owned by the person applying for Medicaid. So if you were to transfer all of your money, all of your property into the name of your spouse, it would still be on the table as far as what Medicaid is looking at when judging whether you are eligible or not for Medicaid. So yes, there is a process of getting your assets down to a certain level where Medicaid says, okay, we will pay for your long-term care, but it's not as simple as just simply putting it into your spouse's name. It gets into a little more than that, and that's a subject for another video. But just know that much. That is a myth if you believe you can do that and become eligible right away for Medicaid. Jointly owned accounts, a similar concept. Sometimes people will add their adult child as a co-owner to their bank account, and they figure, well, that way I'm protecting either all of the money in that account or maybe 50% of the money in that account. I've heard various ideas on this. The answer is no. The Medicaid agency will look at who's actually putting money into that account. So unless you can show that your adult child was contributing part of their income or all of their income to populate the money in that account, Medicaid's just going to assume that it's 100% your money, and so that money is on the table again for Medicaid purposes and for long-term care. So simply adding a child as a co-owner will not protect your assets in the least, not to mention a range of other problems that I've explained in other videos about joint ownership of assets and how that some people do it for convenience and it turns out to be riskier and more trouble than it's worth. One final myth about Medicaid for long-term care is that if I get on Medicaid to pay the nursing home, the quality of care will suffer. Not true. For one, I mean, the caregivers who are on the front lines providing the care to residents of a nursing home don't know one way or another how each resident is paying for that care. That's just not their concern. That's somebody in a back office crunching the numbers who knows how each patient is or resident is paying for it, but the caregivers don't know. It's also very illegal for a facility to discriminate against a certain patient or resident on the basis of how they are paying the facility. So it just doesn't happen. For all practical purposes, if you get on Medicaid, there are some very nice facilities that accept Medicaid. Almost all facilities accept Medicaid. So once you're in there, it's not going to change your experience one way or another. If you have questions about how Medicaid benefits work to pay for long-term care, please send me an email at info@KeystoneElderLaw.com. My name is Patrick Colley.